Hey guys, welcome back to my channel, Shadowburn V. Today I'll be doing an exciting video, and that is to recommend some Asian books, and that is either by an Asian author or Asian protagonist, etc. So let's just get into it. So first and foremost, two things first. The first one is this video was supposed to be made or filmed way back when, I want to say early May, but because it was Asian Readathon, I wanted to give myself some more time to read some more Asian books. Unfortunately though, that didn't really happen, so I only have 5 books to share with you guys this month. I wanted to give you guys a lot more recommendations, but maybe in the future when I get around to reading more books, I will be able to do so, because the last few books I have read that are Asian books by an Asian author, whatever, were not the greatest. So I didn't really have that many books to share, but I do have 5 really solid 5-star books that I really want to share with you guys today. And second of all, my neighbors downstairs are doing some sort of thing. I don't really know what they're doing, but they are really loud. They're downstairs. They've been downstairs for like hours now. I think they have some sort of party. I don't know, but we're just gonna go with it. I'm completely aware that you might hear some of their sounds because I can hear them really loudly and my camera picks up sounds better than I can. So we're just gonna go with it, because if I don't film this today, I don't know when we'll film this, and it's a long weekend and I'm pretty sure they're gonna be there for the next few days. So anyways, moving along. So the first book that I want to share with you guys is Crazy Rich Asians by Kevin Kwan. I don't think I can make this video without including this book, because this book is just amazing. This is a adult contemporary / chick lit kind of book. It's set in Singapore. It incorporates a lot of Southeast Asian cultures, and honestly it's just a really fun and entertaining read. So for those who don't know what the book / series / movie is about, because it has been adapted into a movie for those who don't know, but it follows a girl called Rachel who has a boyfriend called Nick, and one day Nick's friend, his best friend from home from Singapore, is having a wedding and he invites Nick as his best man. So that's a time when Nick decides to tell Rachel that, hey, let's go back to Singapore, I wanted you to meet my parents, etc. And there she finds out that his family is actually incredibly rich and he is probably the #1 bachelor in Asia. And from that moment on, she ends up being thrust into the world of the 1%. The book is glamorous, it's hilarious, and absolutely amazing. The best part for me though wasn't the fact that this book really focused on the rich culture, because that for sure, there's just so many parts in this book where they're talking about millions and billions of dollars like it was nothing, but that wasn't the only cultural shock for me, because obviously I'm not that 1%. But the author really talked about the differences between whether you're a mainland Chinese person or if you're a Chinese person living in Southeast Asia, all the cultural differences between Singaporeans, Malaysians, etc., as well as the difference, and I think that's the most important part for me, is someone who is Asian and born in America versus an Asian person born in Asia. And there are just so many nuances that the author delved into. For example, the relationship and how you treat one's parents and the relationship between a parent and a child, the food cultures, all that stuff was really well described in this book. And it was also really helpful when the author had all these footnotes, which I don't usually enjoy when the author includes a bunch of footnotes, but in this situation it was actually really helpful because there was terminologies, there was explanations about certain things, some of the history background of where it derives from, etc. And it actually was very educational, not just entertaining as a book to read, but it was just really educational as well. And at the end of the day, this book is a romance / chick lit novel, so romance is a very big part of this book, and I really liked how the author portrayed Nick and Rachel's relationship throughout the book and how they matured and learned to trust one another. Because in the beginning, obviously, there was a whole news that Nick didn't tell her that he was one of the 1%, etc. And then after he broke the news to her, there was sort of this distrust going on, and so I really like how the author just portrayed that relationship from start to finish. The only thing though is that I have not picked up the second or third book, which I should probably do as soon as possible, because the first book does end on kind of a cliffhanger-ish, and I was really curious to find out why. But those books are not small. They look very tiny, but I think the first book was like 500+ pages, and I haven't gone around to picking up the second and third book yet, just because there's so many other books I want to read right now. But I do plan to do so as soon as possible, probably in the summer, because I feel like romance is kind of a summer thing to read. So anyways, that is definitely the first book that I highly recommend. Then the next book that I want to recommend is Dragon Pearl by Yoon Ha Lee. This was such an enjoyable middle grade sci-fi novel that incorporates Korean mythology. This book follows a girl called Min, who's also a gumiho, and gumiho in Korean mythology is a 9-tailed fox, who discovers one day that her brother is suspected of leaving his post in the Space Force in search of this legendary item called the Dragon Pearl. And so to find out what really happened, she ends up joining the Space Force, where she has this whirlwind adventure and she meets other mythical beings such as dragons, tigers, and so much more. And this book is just a really fun, entertaining read about learning to be brave despite the odds and just following your dreams. I absolutely love the characters and the plots, but my favorite part though was how the author incorporated Korean mythology with sci-fi. And I really enjoy reading about the different mythical beings as well as their different abilities, and it was just a really fun book, guys. There were all these friendships that were formed, and the characters are so endearing that I couldn't help but root for them all. So if you're looking for a cute Korean-inspired sci-fi middle grade novel, then I definitely recommend this one. The next book that I want to recommend is Pachinko by Min Jin Lee. This is an adult historical fiction that spans across many generations. It follows a Korean family who was forced to move to Japan in the early 1900s after they were exiled from their own country. And the book just focuses on one Korean family across multiple generations and how living in Japan during that time period affected them. This book was probably one of my favorite books of all time. I think this was in my best 2017 books. I don't really remember, but it was definitely up there at some point. And I also did a book review on this, but this was way back when Emily and I were still doing the channel together. So at that time, our reviews were not the most structured, a little bit messy, but definitely check that out in case you're interested in finding out more information about the book. So this was a book where I found out how much I enjoy books that spans across years and years, decades and decades, because you don't just follow a very short time of a character's life, but you follow their entire life. So you basically are just so invested with their story that you can't help but be so impacted by what was going on to them, what they're facing, their hopes, their dreams, all that stuff. And so I realized after reading this book how much I love books like that. So if you enjoy books such as that, then I definitely recommend this one. This was so good. I also love how the book gave me such an interesting and new insight on how it was like to live in Japan as a non-Japanese during that time period. It was honestly just such a fascinating story, and if it wasn't for the fact that I know this is a historical fiction, I would actually believe that these characters were real. That's how invested I was and how enamored I was with the characters. So if you really like characters that are just that comes to life to you, if you like books that spans across generations, if you like historical fiction, if you like books that give you new insight about what it was like to live somewhere else during a different time period, etc., then I highly recommend this book. Cannot recommend this book enough because this book was just amazing. And I actually need to get a copy of this soon because the copy that I did read was actually Emily's copy, so I need to get a copy for myself. But anyways, if there's one book out of this entire list that you want to pick up, let it be this one. The next book that I want to recommend is Internment by Samir Ahmed. This is the only book that I have a physical copy of at this moment because I do have physical copies of most of the other books, but I shipped them all to my parents' place, so this is the only one I still have with me on hand. But anyways, this is next on my list. This is a YA contemporary, possibly dystopian-ish kind of novel because it's set not in the present day, but in the near future of America. And the book follows an Indian American / Muslim American teenager called Layla, where she and her parents are forced into this internment camp for Muslim Americans. And there, during the internment camp, she ends up meeting new friends, learns to fight for her own freedom, and rise up against those who want to subdue her. So this book started off incredibly strong. I was immediately sucked into what was going on because it was so intense with what they were going through as her and her family were suddenly forced to pack up and move to these internment camps. And it was to the point that I was starting to get some anxiety from it because it was just so scary, their fears, the suddenness of it all, the surprise, the fact that they were being betrayed essentially by their own neighbors, and it was such an intense emotional book straight from the beginning. The scariest part about this book though, and what I liked most about this book actually, was how realistic and how probable this might actually happen in our own future because of the whole political situation going on right now, all the discriminations, all the fear against everyone. It was just, this book just was enlightening, I guess, in the sense that I can actually see our future in America where this might become a reality. So this was just a super intense book. It was very emotional, very nerve-wracking, and it was kind of scary at times as well. But to kind of subdue some of that aspect, the main character, Layla, while I found her very courageous and very brave, I did find her, because she was a teenager, I think that played a role, she was a little bit reckless. And there's a lot of stuff that she did, and I won't go into it because of spoilers, but it definitely subdued some of the intensity of this book, because if it wasn't for her, I think I would have just been like, oh my god, the entire time of reading this book. So if you like books that are really intense, very scary books, that's not scary in the sense of like horror, but sense that scary that this might actually happen in real life. If you like books where the characters stand up and fight for themselves, then I highly recommend this book. This book is just so intense. I mean, the entire time I was reading this book, for most of it at least, I was just like, oh my god, I'm just like in a state of like anxiety, and it was just really good. Then the last and final book that I want to discuss in this video and recommend is Astonishing Color of After by Emily X. Arpan. I did a book review on this way back when, so I will link that above in case you want to check that out. This is a YA contemporary / magical realism novel that follows a half Taiwanese / half white. I don't really know what kind of white she is. Not relevant in this video, but her name is Lee, and her mother had just passed away at the beginning of the book, but she now firmly believes that her mother has turned into a bird. And so she ends up going to Taiwan to meet her maternal grandparents for the first time. And then from there, she ends up on this journey to find out more about her past, her mother's past, as well as her present. And this was just such a beautifully written novel about loss, friendship, family, and romance. Two things about this book that I think really stood out. One is the writing. It was absolutely beautiful and lyrical, so if you love beautiful writing, then this is definitely a book for you to check out. And number two, the setting, and that is Taiwan. This book is set in Taiwan, and for those who don't know, I am Taiwanese American, so I have been to Taiwan many times in the past. I used to go once or twice a year, every year, and so I know Taiwan like the back of my hand. It's just like, especially Taipei, like or North Taiwan, I want to say, very familiar to me. And so there were a lot of references in this book that talked about the night market that she went to, the food that she ate, and I was like, you know what, I totally know what you're talking about because I have been there. I've eaten exactly what you're referring to, and it was just so good. I was able to really connect and relate myself to this book and the character. So the fact that I was able to really picture some of the settings of where Lee was going, what she was doing, etc. in Taiwan was just really nice for me to just relate to and connect with. Another thing that I did really like about this book was just how emotionally tied I was with the characters. And for those who don't know, I'm not very emotional when I read or watch movies. It's just not my style. I actually did a video on this, like I kind of referred to it a little bit in my Overhyped book. I will link it above in case you check it out. But I had discussed some of the books where they were just very emotional, and for me, I just couldn't relate to that emotion. I was just like, it's not that emotional for me. And yeah, I found there's a lot of tea there, but whatever. So the point is though, I don't really get emotionally tied with any of the characters, what they're doing, etc. But for this book though, I was so invested and so emotionally tied with everything that Lee was facing. Okay, maybe not everything because that's just an exaggeration there, but a lot of what she was going through, I was just so connected with her. So if you're looking for a book with a rich setting, beautiful writing, as well as an emotional book in general, then I definitely highly recommend this one. So overall, these are all the books that I want to discuss and recommend in this video. Let me know down below if you have read any of the books I mentioned here. Let me know down below if there are any more recommendations that you want me to check out. But as always, if you like this video, please give me a thumbs up, subscribe down below, don't forget to follow me on Twitter and Instagram, and I'll see you guys next time. Bye!